So long, farewell.
Ted Lasso Season 3 has come to a close. Did everyone get their happy endings? Let's find out just what happened. What's up, you lovely people? Lisa here, and it is time to talk all things Ted Lasso. So Season 3, Episode 12, titled So Long, Farewell, really acted like a series finale. Now, Apple TV Plus really has yet to officially confirm the status of the show, but from interviews that Jason Sudeikis and some of the other writers and stuff have been doing leading up to this finale, they've kind of made it definitely seem like Ted's story was supposed to be only 3 seasons long, and that if the show continues, it will be in a sequel series or a spin-off of some sort. But as I'm making this video, there's been no official confirmation from Apple TV Plus, so let's just talk about how everyone's happy endings ended up in this finale. Obviously, there are spoilers ahead. Now, for the team, AFC Richmond, they had a very up and down season. One-star player, Zoreaux, arrived and things seemed to be going well until he left, and then the team, again, lost belief in themselves. And after Coach Ted taught them a new way to play, or, well, a new way to them to play called Total Football, the team started dominating again, getting themselves near the top of the league. In the finale, they face off against rivals West Ham. By the half, they're losing, but Ted, of course, gives one of his TED Talks, and we see that the team has all kept their pieces of the believe sign, and they put it back together. They're rejuvenated, they go out in the second half and end up tying the game after a goal by Tart, and then a surprising penalty kick by Isaac. Then West Ham go on to score again, but nope, Ted is like, they're offsides. Yes, Ted finally understands what offsides is. He was like, in the beginning, you'll know it when you see it, and he saw it and he knew it. Now, there's a bunch of callbacks in this episode that I'm going to have in a separate video, but I just kind of love that one. Then AFC Richmond goes on to win off a goal in the last minute by Sam. It was a play that Nate first pitched to Ted. It was one of his first big plays, that decoy play. Now, after an awesome season, AFC Richmond does end up second, unfortunately, behind Man City, but they don't care. They're extremely happy, and they do qualify for the Champions League. So while they didn't win it all, they had victory, and they have that Champions League coming up, and now they're more of a team than they ever have been. Now for our characters. It was pretty evident throughout the season that Ted was growing very homesick, especially with all the Wizard of Oz references. Then when his mom came to visit and said Henry missed him, we pretty much knew it was a done deal. Ted ends up returning home to be with Michelle and Henry after Rebecca does her best to try to convince him to stay or even move Michelle and Henry to the UK. But he does return home to Henry, and while I say Henry and Michelle, he mostly returns home for Henry, obviously, but it seems like Michelle's boyfriend, Dr. Jacob, has maybe been kicked to the curb since he spent most of the Ted's big game on his phone and not really being enthusiastic and getting bombastic side-eye from Michelle. So, has Ted given up coaching forever? Nope. He's actually seen coaching Henry's soccer game and telling him to be a goldfish. Watch out, youth soccer. Lasso is coming to win it all. Another cute thing here, or Easter egg, is that Henry is wearing Jamie's number. Now, a lot of the side characters get their updates in the magazine covers, and I'll talk about most of them near the end, but this one I just wanted to talk about first because it's one of my favorites. Thierry Zoreaux, the goalie who was so inspired by Zaba to change his name to Van Damme, in this episode finally goes back to being called Zorro after getting his nose broken by Dani Rojas earlier in international play. Dani makes a peace offering with a new mask that's black and looks like, you know, the hero with the sword Zorro's mask, and well, Van Damme decides to go back to being called Zorro, but not spelled how his last name really is, but like Z-O-R-R-O. But we have this magazine cover when Ted is in the airport that says Zorro got a summer job, and he'll be starring in his hero Jean-Claude Van Damme's remake of the Sylvester Stallone soccer movie Escape to Victory. I would actually love to see that movie. Now, Rebecca all season has been dealing with her future. She sees that psychic who she thinks is a fraud named Tish, who says that Rebecca will find a green matchbook that will be very special, and that she'll hear the phrase "shite in knighting armor" at one point, and that she will at one point be drenched and upside down but safe, and that Rebecca will have a family. And we've seen all of those come true throughout the season, so she's actually not bogus like she thinks. The green matchbook comes into play because it's Sam's restaurant, and while her and Sam don't get back together, they do, I guess, have some kind of understanding or closure behind him, and it seems like Sam did mean a lot to her. She does end up running into that one guy, John, that she dated, whose fiance says the "shite in knighting armor" quote. Then when they were in Amsterdam, she falls over into the water, where she's saved by that hot Dutchman. But it's the last thing, being a family and a mother, that we see come true for Rebecca in this finale. Rebecca wrestles with what to do now that Ted is leaving. She even considers leaving the team and selling it for £2 billion. But instead, she decides to stay and sell 49% of the club to the fans because Richmond and the team are the family she never had. See? family. But that's not the only way she gets a family. When she leaves the airport after one last goodbye with Ted, she ends up bumping into that Dutchman who is a pilot and meets his daughter. And we see that they're still together at one of Higgins' good old barbecues. So if they last, she is now a stepmom, which is awesome. For Higgins, we see him happy with his family, throwing those team dinners, just being the best. Oh, Higgins. Now, Roy really started to get in touch with his emotions this season, especially after losing Keeley. After a few people tell him he is just too stubborn and keeps getting in his own way and that he really needs to figure out what he wants, he apologizes to Keeley and they have a one-night stand. Now, he has hopes that they'll get back together, but when she says no in the finale, he feels lost. He ends up finally asking to become a diamond dog and asks if people can change, to which everyone gives him some pretty great advice. Now, after Ted leaves, Roy is named the new manager, and we see he's finally ready to become better, and we see him begin therapy with none other than Dr. Sharon, who has returned to AFC Richmond to become their head of mental health and emotional well-being. I'm sad that we didn't really get a goodbye between her and Ted. I hope he still calls her every now and then to talk, but I love that she still has his little army man and that she was cheering for them the whole game in a room. Now, with Ted leaving, we were all wondering if Coach Beard would leave too. Well, he initially was going to, but then he finally let it out to Ted that he was in love with Jade and couldn't leave, so he gets off that plane, but in order to do so, he fakes having appendicitis. And I love that when the flight attendant asks Ted if he wants to go to the hospital to be with his friend, he says no and smiles, and she calls him an arsehole, an a-hole. You know what? I'm sure Ted doesn't get called that very often, but it was just funny. If she only knew, right? Anyway, Beard stays to continue being an assistant coach at Richmond, and he marries Jade, who is pregnant, and we even learn in this finale that his name is Willis, which was actually referenced in season 2 when Ted said, "What you talking about, Willis?" to Beard, and we all thought he was just doing, the famous quote from Different Strokes. But in this episode, Ted says, "I love you, Willis," before, Willis gets off the plane. So either Willis is really his first name or just the nickname that Ted has given him, but either way, Willis Beard. Now, Nate obviously had one of the biggest arcs throughout the 3 seasons, going from Kitman to Nate the Great, to coach, to Wonder Kid, to villain, to leaving to go into West Ham, and then realizing the error of his ways, to becoming a waiter at his favorite restaurant, to being unemployed, and then after lots of apologies and forgiveness, going back to AFC Richmond, but not as a coach, not even as the Kitman, but the assistant to the Kitman, working under Will. And you know what? Nate actually just seems so happy and grateful to even be there. The team is so happy to have him there, even though they give him a £5,000 fine, but he's happy to pay it. And along this way, he actually got a girlfriend, started to date Jade, the hostess from the restaurant, and he even reconciled with his father. Now, after Roy takes over as manager, we see that Nate again becomes an assistant coach alongside Coach Beard, and Nate ends up putting that believe sign back together, and we see him, Roy, and Beard put it up. So a piece of Ted is always there. It's also beautiful the way that he put it back together with gold glue, and I'll talk about that in the Easter eggs video, but if you look up the meaning of that with the Japanese pottery and all that, it's about forgiveness and learning to forgive yourself and forgive others. Now at the end with Nate, we see that he is eating dinner with Jade and his family, all at his favorite table in his favorite restaurant. Now Keeley went through quite a lot of ups and downs this season too with her PR firm. After launching it, she ends up getting a big investment, then falls for that investor, a billionaire named Jack, and well, after a leaked photo scandal, she turns cold and blames Keeley, and when Keeley doesn't do the public apology that Jack wants, Jack ghosts Keeley and claims that the board is pulling the funding and there's nothing she can do, but it's basically her and she's blindsiding Keeley. Well, Keeley finally tells Rebecca what's going on. Rebecca invests in the company, and we see by the end that Keeley has gotten back on her feet, rebranding her PR firm from KJPR, Keeley Jones PR, to KBPR to include Barbara, her hilarious CFO that she's built a relationship throughout this entire season. But the company is thriving, and Keeley even ends up pitching Rebecca on the idea of an AFC Richmond women's team. Rebecca seems to be thrilled about it, and this could be a possible spin-off if they choose to go that route. But as for this love triangle, Keeley ends the show single because Roy and Jamie end up, solidifying their bromance, but then getting in a fist fight over Keeley and then going to her house to say she has to choose between them, and that's a pretty dumb move, boys, because we see that she has chose none of them. But don't worry, the bromance is still intact, and all 3 of them are still friends as we see them hanging out with Phoebe at Higgins barbecue. Now, when it comes to Jamie, besides not getting another chance with Keeley, we do see that he has reconnected with his dad and they look happy. It seems like his dad was in rehab for some reason, we don't know why, but his dad has been working on himself, and we know that Jamie hasn't had the best relationship with his dad throughout the series. So after that penultimate episode when Jamie gets the advice that he needs to try and forgive his dad, it looks like it's all worked and they're both healing. Sam also had a lot of ups and downs this season too, from his restaurant being vandalized to Edwin Akufo returning with a vendetta since Sam turned down his offer to play for him, and Akufo basically shattering Sam's dream of playing for the Nigerian team. Well, for Sam's happy ending, we do see that he finally got to play for the Nigerian team. Trent Crimm went from reporter to author and has spent the whole season following around the team to write a book. He finishes the book, and after a note from Ted saying it wasn't all about him, the book is changed from the Lasso way to the Richmond way, and Trent's got a hit on his hands. Kind of makes me wonder if they do a sequel series that obviously would not have Ted but continues with everybody else, could they have it be called the Richmond way, since, Ted said it wasn't always about him. So take out Ted Lasso's name, call it the Richmond way. As for team captain Isaac, he ends up taking his first penalty kick of his career and burning a hole right in the net. Now Colin, he had a journey this season too, finally coming out to the team, but he wasn't quite ready to do that with the world. Well, we see he still leaves tickets for his boyfriend Michael under the name Winona Judd, a call back to what Ted leaves tickets under, country singers' names. And Michael comes to the big game, and after AFC Richmond wins and everyone's kissing and hugging their loved ones on the field, Colin and Michael kiss in front of everyone. We also see they're still together at Beard's wedding, and even Isaac has a lady on his arm. Now Dani Rojas, living his best life, we see he's still with those two women we saw him wake up with in season 2 after he has that bad dream about, what he did to the Greyhound. And what about our favorites at the Crown and Anchor pub? Well, we see the trio now share one share of AFC Richmond. I love that he's holding it with the white glove so you don't get it dirty. And May, well, she owns a bunch of shares now. She also fixes the picture that's on the wall that has quite the significance if you've ever watched Cheers, and I'll talk about that more in the Easter eggs video. Then we have some of the magazines and tabloids from the airport that inform us of other people, side characters we've met throughout the show. After all his antics and affairs and misconduct, especially in this episode, Rupert is officially out at West Ham and he's getting a divorce. So sorry, not sorry, dude, but didn't it feel like he went full on Dark Sith Lord in this finale, like with his coat waving in the wind as he marched down onto that field? If only they had played the Imperial March behind. Now we see that his ex-wife Bex has landed a book deal while his mistress is heading to their version of Love Island, Love Conquers All, and you gotta wonder, can she last longer than Jamie did? Zava is doing great with his avocado farm in California, but he's also come out of retirement to play for the Los Angeles Football Club. It kind of annoys me that Shandy seems to have found major success with her dating app, which lands her on the cover of Entrepreneur magazine. And did you see what else is on the cover of that magazine? It says Jack Danvers is no longer daddy's little girl, and I feel like this could have a few different interpretations or meanings. Is she no longer daddy's little girl because she has her own scandal that has come out and she is no better than Keeley? She's probably actually worse. Is it that she's bounced off on her own and left her father's company? I don't even remember what company she was working for, if it was even her own, but she's got a lot of money, so who cares? But I feel like maybe this hints that something has gone wrong for her. But yeah, that's basically how Ted Lasso ended for each character. I know there's this theory going around that I also thought for a minute that all these happy endings could have just been a dream that Ted had, and it was just his happy wishes he wanted for everybody, because we see Ted fall asleep on the plane, then we see what happens to everybody, then he wakes up and has his happy ending where he's coaching Henry. We have an update on the dream theory. Brendan Hunt, who plays Coach Beard and is a writer on the show, actually just did an AMA after I obviously wrote this whole video, so this is an insert from Future Lisa. When asked in the final episode of season 3, is the Beard and Jane wedding a dream sequence of Ted's or is it real? Brendan Hunt just plain and simple said real. And then when it comes to why Ted was not at Coach Beard's wedding, Brendan went on to say there's a few reasons, but mainly one is the narrative. We just saw Ted got on a plane. It wouldn't make sense for him to already be back in the UK and then all of a sudden back at home. It just takes away from the narrative. But also he explains the friendship that Ted and Beard have, and he gives, an example of his own life where this happened with him and his best friend Joe Kelly, where they decided to get married in less than a month, and they were like, okay, it's okay if you can't make it on short notice. So he thinks that's pretty much what happened with Ted and Beard, because Beard is kind of the spontaneous type. He would have gotten married in like a week's notice, I feel like. But Brendan basically said, I think Beard called Ted, told him he could sit this one out, and Ted said thanks because the ceremony conflicted with the big game of Henry's soccer team. The history of their relationship, in my opinion, is long periods of seeing each other and long periods of not. We have entered one of the latter, but the former will come around again at some point. So they're those best friends that can go a long time without seeing each other, and then when they see each other, it's like nothing has passed. But yeah, I gotta know, what did you think of that finale of Ted Lasso? What did you think about season 3 as a whole? Because I know this was a divisive season. It was very up and down for me, but a lot of people have said this season wasn't as good as the past until like the last couple episodes. If there is a spin-off of Ted Lasso, what would you like to see? I kind of also wish that Trent Crimm's book was actually real, because I would definitely go buy that. But let me know down in the comments all your thoughts and theories about this finale of Ted Lasso, your favorite characters, what you'll miss the most. And after that, you can check out an Easter eggs video right over here and let me know if you caught all those references. And yeah, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because I'll always be here. My name's Lisa. Thanks for listening to me ramble, and I'll see you next time.